Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is day 1 and partly day 2 of the Babuji gathering. We're 3 sittings in, so we're halfway through the Babuji gathering. So the first 2 sittings were on the 29th of April, a little bit groggy. And the third sitting was this morning. And so the sittings have been, it's hard to grade the sittings on how the meditative experience goes. Like, if there's restlessness and there's deep cleaning, it's not going to be a pleasant sitting. So the sittings, I'm not talking about how pleasant they are. I talk about, sittings in terms of, again, power is not used in the Sahaj Marg system. It's the forceless force, right? Transmission, like no force is used. But, how strong the sittings are. So some sittings are there's just more there. And a sitting that's unpleasant to go through, Charji said that all the great sittings, the best sittings he had, were very unpleasant. Sometimes physical pain. There's a sitting he was meditating with Don Savarin. Babuji was giving them both a sitting. And he was doing special work on Charji. And Don was there for the sitting. Like, he wrote about it somewhere. So there was 2, Charji wrote about it in his diary, and then Don, which was published, and Don spoke about it somewhere or something. So there's 2. There's when you're dealing with something that's, very well could be imaginary, right? Because it's happening in the etheric world. It's not something you can prove. Your experience. That's why diary writing is like spiritual science. Or me doing something like I'm doing here with the audio diary. Of the experiences are somewhat of the same thing. And each person is going to have different experiences because, the sittings work differently depending on each person. Some people could be blissed out. Other people could be going through deep cleaning. So it's like whatever it is. But so Charji gave a sitting. And he said to Babuji, when Babuji asked about experience, he said that he felt like a spike was being driven in the top of his skull for 40 minutes or something. It's just, you didn't have a headache. It was like that experience, but there was some point being opened up and there was some pain in it, right? Babuji had met some guy in Tibet who had surgically opened up his third eye or some point in his head. Had somebody, they drilled a hole in his skull. And something happened, and Babuji said it kind of had worked. And he couldn't believe that a person could go through that much pain. He was impressed by the guy because of, how painful that was. And the guy now had a hole in his skull, but somehow that had worked to open up a point where Babuji said, of course, through the Sahaj Marg system, we can do it without surgery. Surgery is unnecessary. So that was, but he was impressed with the guy's ability to, his commitment. And so, having said all that, the first sitting, there's a lot of energy in it. So it was a good sitting for the kickoff where you could feel something. The second sitting I was so restless. It was so uncomfortable that it was like, is this really even like a sitting? And so the thing that I wrestle with these gatherings is that, do I work as a preceptor for the gathering or just meditate with everybody else? Gratefulness meditation began without me thinking that I was going to act as a preceptor. It was me, the whole thing started with, I wasn't feeling anything from Daji. I was going to quit the heartfulness thing if I was receiving transmission from them. Because I was like, why should I quit if Daji sucks, right? So, that's the obvious, that's, pretty obvious stuff. They suck, why should I quit because they suck, right? and transmission, me receiving transmission was, I don't say I felt entitled to it, because it's always something that's a gift that's more than anybody deserves. But it was something that, was a big part of my life. And I mean, the most important thing in different ways. It changed me it made me a functioning person. Like, I was a low functioning person. Like, I have, the gift of being such a low functioning person that the transmission and the Sahaj Marg system brought in so many things that changed me for the better, that I could, attribute that it's, I worked at it. I mean, it's not like I didn't participate in it. Like, I worked at it. But, it's clear that the system's a gift in every possible way. Like, I'm grateful for everything I have received. It's, transformed me. So, but this happened during Basant. And, Basant was my first gathering ever, which is Babuji's birthday. We went to some place. The preceptors that we went to, their house was out of town. And we went to this woman's house who is now quit. But she had actually brought in a lot of people. She was an older, new age kind of hippie woman. And she had a nice house. She was married to some successful guy, I think, whatever. I never met her husband, but because he didn't do the meditation. But he went out or something. We went to her house for these sittings. There was the two preceptors. They must have gone to India or something. And the sittings were amazing. They were just like incredible. And it was my first time where I really liked group meditation, because I didn't really experience the things in group meditation I did individual meditation. Like, I like some of the group meditations, they were better, but but I felt good that day. Like, no matter what, after I left, I felt. That's the other thing, is how you feel after the sitting, right? How do you feel after the gathering? Like, the sittings can all be excruciating and difficult. And so, the gatherings I went to were sometimes there was people there. And so, but my preceptor, Fred, said that, like, he felt like Lalaji had come back. And then we heard something from Charji about this, to give the sittings. And so there's something to do with that. But what happened, so my first, like, experience ever for, like, these kind of a gathering was this Lalaji gathering, which is, of course, he's the first master. So it's just, and there was this gap from Charji's birthday. I started in August, and the first gathering was going to be Lalaji's birthday. And so in 2023, I was doing the Heartfulness gathering, and I was like, this is like, why am I even bothering to meditate? Like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything afterwards, and I'm not feeling anything in terms of what am I going to do here, right? And it was a gathering where Daji said he got a whispers message from Babuji saying to cancel the two middle gatherings, Charji's and Babuji's, and combine them with Lalaji's and Daji's, which was so fucking goofy. Obviously not true, So, I mean, I've talked about this so much, and I'm not feeling anything there in the gathering. And I was waiting, to eat dinner with my wife. She was coming home a little bit late, and I was just watching TV, and I felt transmission, like powerful transmission, strong transmission. And I just stopped and meditated for whatever it was, and it was pure transmission. And I looked, and there was no sitting going on from Daji. And I'm like, well, that was it. Like, I'm done. And then I started to meditate, cut all ties with Daji and Heartfulness. And everything returned. Like, I've had transformative experiences even recently with this whole, the way I'm meditating now, this thoughtlessness stuff. My meditations are so much better, and they're just, like, I'm just experiencing them on a different level. It's like I've had a consciousness shift. Like, there's a level where I could just drop into a deeper state of meditation. And so, the fact that it happened spontaneously was the big thing. And so going back to that Lology gathering, Fred said that Lology had come back from, the brighter world to give the sittings. And there's always this idea that the master, whose ever birthday it is, comes back and participates. They're always there, but this is like, Babuji used to sometimes be giving a sitting, and he would just flop on the floor. Like he'd get out of the chair in the middle of the meditation. People maybe heard him or not. And then the meditation was over, and he would say Lology came back and gave the sitting. And so he didn't want to sit in the chair because Lology was, its etheric body was sitting there. And I've had some of these gatherings where Charji said this happened, whatever. Some of these birthday gatherings and whatever they were. And there are times that Babuji would be giving a sitting to Charji, and he'd say, we would sit on the side of Charji and say, Lology's here to give the sitting today. And so, there was that element. And so these gatherings have been, like, the training that I have, the preceptor training, there's some techniques that was given for the full preceptors. Like there's provisional preceptors that were in point 2, and provisional preceptors that were put into mind region at point 7. That they had their points charged up to point 7, and they were given, full preceptors were like, this is like a lifetime thing. There's no quitting, although some people did. And then sometimes Charji would withdraw the full preceptorship for whatever reason that people were, not getting it or whatever. But there's, the training is in terms of these gatherings. Now, if you went to a Babuji gathering in America at the ashram, preceptors would give the sittings. But Charji was giving the same sitting in India. There was no internet, YouTube video type things back then. This is the 90s and 2000s. And then, these, I don't know how people dealt with them, but there was no sense of leaving an empty chair there so the master could come back and give a sitting, but the sittings were very specific. The sittings for the gatherings, and so the idea was that the preceptor giving the sitting in America would be giving the same sitting that was given 9 hours earlier by Charji. And some of these gatherings, it was like people would, if we were at home, we would find out what time they were meditating in India and meditate at the same time. And of course, there could be, issues, delays or whatever. And then knowing how long the sitting would go and things, you had to sense it for yourself. And so, it was a little kind of hard to figure out. And so, and I didn't, like I said, have the training for gathering sittings. And, so I've always had some issues with this since doing the preceptor stuff for Gratefullness and meditation. Mostly it was to set up the website and do an individual sitting every week, which I can feel the sitting. So going into this one, I feel like this was a big gathering. I kind of felt like Babuji's going to come back and whatever. And, and I don't know what to say about it. So the first 2 sittings I did them as a preceptor, and I'm just like, last night I was just like, I'm just going to just do this like an Abhyasi. And the third sitting this was the third sitting this morning, so the second sitting was so restless. I'm like, the third sitting this morning, I was like, I'm just going to do it as an Abhyasi. And it's just, again, these are the cleaning sittings, initial part of the gathering. And so we'll see how this develops. I feel good. I'm a little bit out of it this morning, but there's this much through the gathering. Like I'd say, the most notable sitting was how restless I felt on the second sitting on day 1. And so today's Babuji's birthday. There's the, and again, I would assume that there's a deep cleaning in this gathering. I had that sort of extended migraine that went on for like 3 or 4 days, and that sort of lingered. Like it could come back at any time for the next so many days. But I felt pretty good, at least physically. Like I didn't have any kind of illnesses, but, it's been a very intense period. The last, for years now, but, certainly the chaos that's happening in America and these things. But anyways, in terms of the update of the gathering, like I think there's, it's like going to be like a wait and see till after the gathering, like what effects it has. But right now I would say there's a lot of deep cleaning going on just based in, my experiences. All right, so I'm going to do a video on my regular channel today that won't be out till, I don't know, tomorrow or no, the next day, probably tomorrow. And then, yeah, I think my other videos are being released today here. There's one scheduled for today. So my video that'll be up on April 31st will be the One True Religion. It's just an audio video. And I'm going to, it's just something that I've, want to, it'll speak for itself. And that'll also be in the Journey series at some point. So yeah, so that's what's up. And so I'll check in again tomorrow. And then there'll be afterthoughts of the gathering, as always. But, people could write about what they're experiencing in the comments because, it's that's also helpful. The issue here is, gatherings are supposed to be people are coming together. And it's, the ability for everyone to, like I could make a video, but people are going to see the video at different times. And so, it's the time released aspect of the sitting, because the sitting isn't in the video. It happens when it happens. But it works well with the individual sittings. The group meditation, we were all doing it when it started off. I felt was going really well, at least for me, because there's no way you can experience it for other people. But the feedback I was getting, and then, this whole thing about me doing the sitting and these things, and, the group meditations are like not my thing as much as the individual sittings in terms of my own personal experience. Like the big sittings I've had, there's been some gatherings that the overall effect of the gathering was great. And then there's, some of them were birthday related, some were just Chargy coming to America. But, there's just an information gap that I have, and I don't feel like I'm certainly directed internally, but I don't have conversations, who would I have a conversation with? Like, I didn't know Babuji. And so, I mean, Chargy, would be the only, and I don't know, like he wasn't, he didn't have the ability for being that kind of a medium, right? Everyone has their different ways of receiving information, but he certainly was, he just got pure information from Babaji, but they weren't having conversations. And so ideas come to me and I have to, they're always going to be subtle. And so like it's, and there's no literary reference to what's going on with Daji and that failure, like this, there was never any hint that this was going to happen. There's zero knowledge. There's zero, like, what do you do? Like, there's no blueprint for dealing with this, which is what I always say. And so I just have to sort of, in a time where there's no, master to write to or anything. Like I can pray and say, please guide me in this direction or whatever it is. But, it's limited. Like it's a bunch of people who heard about Sahaj Marg from me who, are having their own experiences without the benefit of an organization, that's, in a time where it's just like the world's falling apart, so this stuff. But anyways, that's where we're at, and that's just how it is. I'll check in again tomorrow. Only spirituality will save this world. This Paul Romano, definitely important from the Apocalaughs. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.